The Hollow Beneath Part 1. The night over Coldhaven was almost a solid thing, dense, physical, as if the sky had lowered itself until the stars brushed the rooftops and the river froze mid-thought. We were deep into the polar night, the calendar insisting late November while the body told a different story. That time had folded into a ribbon of dusk and headlights, and the hum of a generator behind a cinder-block wall. Across the Yukon River, the snowfields gleamed with their own ghost light. The wind smelted breath into silver. The Arctic Mart was not so much a store as a lighthouse pointed inland. Its windows gave off the kind of fluorescence that makes skin look tired and fruit look radioactive. The sign rattled, but the doors never locked. Out here, you learn the new commandments fast. Don't leave anyone in the cold, don't count on a morning to fix the night. And if something bangs from inside the freezer, you wedge the door with a broken broom handle and keep pretending it's the compressor. I clocked in with fingers that barely felt the plastic, numb from the 90-second jog between my apartment and the back door. The ceiling tiles had acquired a delicate lace of frost along the vents. I tugged my beanie lower and checked the register. Till counted, receipt paper loaded, price gun holstered like I might duel a carton of eggs. I took my station under the camera bubble and stared at my reflection, a smudge with a name tag. Lila, it read. It still surprised me sometimes, how a shape as small as my name could anchor a life as wide as this place. 32 years old if you asked me. Juno transplant if you pushed. Haunted if you looked long enough and my face forgot to behave. Brought you coffee, Talia said, shoving the door from the stockroom with her shoulder. A fog of breath followed her. She moved like the wind made of bone, joints sure in the cold. Her beanie cream, patterned by her mother, was pulled down to her eyebrows. The steam curling from the lid of the paper cup smelled like salvation. "You're a saint," I said and sipped. Burned tongue, perfect pain. Anyone in yet. 2 trappers, 1 tourist lost on a bet, and a man who paid with a $50 minted before my grandmother learned to swear. She lowered her voice. He had the thing with the eyes. Normal amount of the thing. Too normal, she said, like he practiced. We stood quiet. The hum from the freezers turned into a low choir. Out on the road, a plow went by like a ship in fog. It was a small thing, the quiet. Its texture always changed right before the customers who made you uncertain about your own hands, like the air shifted a decimal. "You ever find that list again?" I asked, half joke, half fishing line into deep water. Talia's mouth twitched. Maybe. Maybe yes. Maybe don't dig. She vanished into the stockroom. I pretended to arrange jerky sticks by flavor profile, though out here all the profiles were salt and teeth. The bell over the door chimed and a woman came in, her parka the exact red of a stop sign given a heartbeat. Snow dusted her shoulders. She didn't shake it off. She didn't seem bothered by the heat, either, though it slapped anyone human across the face after a wind like that. "Evening," I said. The register's green display cast a small aurora on the counter. Her eyes were pale, not blue exactly, but thin milk with bright threads. When she blinked, something in the motion snuck sideways, a shudder inside a shudder. She smiled a fraction too late. "Meat," she said, her voice carrying an echo like she was standing at the bottom of a well. "For the cold." "We've got roasts in the cooler and ground in the case," I said. "Chickens on sale." She considered, head tilting as if listening to a coach in a distant room. "Red," she decided, and drifted toward the back. Her boots squeaked wet against tiles scrubbed raw. She lifted packages one by one, holding them up to the fluorescent light like a jeweler judging stones. I knew I was starring. I looked away, counted scratch-offs, forced a yawn. When she returned, the meat lay in her arms like a child not quite asleep. She set it down, peeled off a mitten, and reached into her pocket. She laid exact coins on the rubber mat. They clicked in a rhythm that made my heart argue with itself. The oldest quarter said 1963. It felt warm. "Anything else?" I asked. Her lips parted and something inside the mouth rearranged first, as if a second set of teeth was smoothing into place. Advice, she said. Is the door wedged? Then I stopped. What door? Her smile widened, and the skin of her cheeks struggled to remember how far skin could go. We merged to survive, she whispered. The words landed against my eardrum with a vibration not entirely theirs. Then she lifted her bundle of meat, coins left like a tip from time, and walked into the dark as calmly as a person going home through rain. The bell chimed again. The quiet returned to its regular quiet. I breathed. Talia reappeared, sleeves powdered with flour from wrestling a shipment of cheap bread no one loved until the road closed for 3 days. Well, she asked. She did the line, I said. Red parka, the blink. I hesitated. She knew about the door. Which door? Talia asked, but she didn't sound like she needed me to say it. The freezer had been patched so many times it looked like the after picture for a product no one would buy. People said old compressors learn to talk when the seals give out. They groan and chitter and develop opinions about the inventory. You convince yourself that scratching is mechanical when the alternative keeps you up. I busied myself. Someone needed cigarettes, someone else needed propane, someone needed to caution me in a voice that didn't line up quite right that the river ice had shifted and would swallow any truck that thought it was still last winter. We sold duct tape, protein bars, 8 packs of neon ramen, tiny fruit that pretended to be mandarins. Newcomers always tilted their heads at the shelf of wood chisels and the rack of rosaries. The old rules of Alaska are simple. Fix it yourself and pray quick. At 1:07 a.m. my skin prickled under my sweater. The sound arrived like a memory, a slow scrape, as if nails learned to write across steel. It came from the back. It came through the hanging plastic strips we walked through 100 times a night. Talia and I looked at each other. Her eyes were the color of river ice before it betrays you. Don't, she said. The rules, I said. I didn't mean to. The word leapt out of my mouth like it had been waiting there with a bag packed. She sighed through her teeth. You shouldn't have seen them. You left them where I would. I left them where someone like you would, she said softly, which is not a point in your favor. Another scrape, closer, not frantic, polite knocking by someone raised right. The top of my stomach hollowed. I thought of the red parka. I thought of the coins. I thought of nothing at all, which is the best way to keep walking. The back hallway smelled like bleach and onion skins. The motion light fluttered, trying to decide if we moved. The freezer door stood there with its paint fugitive, and its gasket logic, and the little wedge of wood we kept beside it like a talisman. Someone had doodled a smiley face on the handle in permanent marker, and then carefully blacked the eyes out. Don't, Talia said again. She wasn't pleading. She was measuring me for a choice. If we wedge it when it scratches, it can't. It's less likely to come through wrong. What is it? I asked. My voice sounded like I had borrowed it without permission. Take this. She shoved a box cutter into my palm. And don't ask questions that turn us into answers. I slid the wedge under the door, the wood biting tile. The scraping paused. Something pressed from the other side, weight against the metal. The hinge sighed. Then came a sound worse than nails or knuckles, breathing, shallow and too precise, like someone had learned it from a textbook and was proud to demonstrate. Lila, the breathing said, not with a mouth, with the space inside my name where the air moved. Lila, let me out. I jerked back. The box cutter clicked open in my hand with a small animal noise. Talia's profile sharpened. She stood between me and the door like a person might stand between a river and a child. Go out front, she said. I'll watch it. It said my name. It says a lot of things. It knows the rules. Of course it does. Her throat worked. That's how rules work. We held our positions the way people hold their breath during turbulence, promising a God we don't believe in to be different if the plane doesn't shake apart. The breathing on the other side steadied itself into my own rhythm. I had the ugly idea that if I breathed faster it would try to keep up. So I slowed. So it slowed. My vision went bright around the edges. Then from the sales floor the bell chimed and the spell snapped. Talia cursed under her breath and shoved me toward the light. "Go," she hissed. "I'll wedge it twice." Out front a boy stood by the energy drink display, pretending to examine bargains no one believed in. 17, 18, hat with a team whose colors looked weird this far north. He bought gum and a lottery ticket like a dare. When he smiled, his teeth were honest and his eyes were just eyes. Relief hit me so hard I had to grip the counter. "You okay?" he asked, because people up here are taught to be nosy and kind in equal parts. "Long night," I said. He left, tucking his hands into his sleeves, and I didn't watch him walk into the dark because sometimes that makes the dark remember you. Talia returned with the set of a person who has lifted something that did not want to be lifted. Her breath painted the air. "Double wedge," she said. "We're fine for now." She reached under the counter and pulled out a brittle folder wrapped in butcher's twine. She laid it down like a priest lays down a book. "You might as well read it properly." The paper inside had browned at the edges. Letters sank slightly from the typewriter's punch. The title was not a title, just a plain reality. Rules for Night. Someone had taped a grocery receipt onto the first page in 1979. The ink had bled into the tape like a bruise. Avoid eye contact with raw meat buyers. Wedge the freezer door open if scratching is heard. Ignore layered voices. Hide in the break room if you see yourself on cameras elsewhere. Answer "I'm still adapting" if asked. "Are you one of us?" "Who wrote these?" I asked. "People who worked here before us," Talia said. "People who listened, people who didn't." She brushed a fingertip over the final line. "My Aunt Mara's name is on the 4th page. She added the bit about the cameras." My mouth dried. "Your sister was replaced," she said, and the word came out not like ice but like the crack that ice makes over a river you thought was solid. "Mara is my sister. My aunt. Mara is also the one who taught me the shelves in the dark and the sound of the generator when it's lying. In our family names, time loops." She flipped to the back. "And here, someone crossed out a rule. Don't speak to her if she uses your name through the door." The line was inked over to illegibility, but I could feel the shape of it under the pen strokes. "Why cross it out?" I asked, "if it's useful?" "Because at some point, someone decided it wasn't a rule anymore," Talia said. "Or they needed it not to be true." The bell chimed. The night had decided to bring us a parade. A tall man in a snowsuit too clean to have worked in it. His hands were gloveless and the nails looked new, like someone had poured them. He smiled a good smile and asked for diesel. He paid with a bill that smelled faintly of wet dirt. When he left, Talia leaned on the counter and closed her eyes for one long blink. "Why do you stay?" I asked before I could corral the words. "You could transfer, day shift at least." "Because someone has to chart it," she said, "and because you are here." I straightened. "What's that supposed to?" "You don't feel it," she tapped the folder. "Things calibrate around you. The worst ones don't enter when you're on register. The newborns," she hesitated. "They listen a little. I moved you to nights on purpose." Heat flared under my skin that was not from the coffee. "To test me." "To test the store," she said. "And because I had to know if my memory of childhood was mine." "How would my being here change your childhood?" I asked, then hated how the question sounded. Sharp, unkind, naive. Talia didn't flinch. "You floated into Coldhaven with no family history anyone could vouch for before 17, she said. "You forget birthdays and remember wind directions. You walk home at -30 without a scarf. Your teeth don't chatter unless someone else's do." She lifted her gaze to the convex eye of the camera above us. "You never look up at those unless I make you." The room seemed to tilt 1 degree. "What are you saying?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Through the wall, something scratched again, quick now, as if impatient with our small talk. We both turned our heads the way birds do, assessing angles of danger. A second later, the scratch answered itself from the ceiling, a scatter of tiny impacts like sleet. One of the mannequins from the end cap display shivered and nodded at nothing. "Don't," Talia said for the third time that night, and the word had used up its patience. But the freezer called my name again, and this time it didn't sound learned. It sounded remembered. I took a step backward toward the hall. Talia's hand shot out and closed around my wrist. Her grip was firm, warm, human. It pinched the fear into the shape of something I could carry. "You're shaking," she said. "So are you." We shook together for a count of 4, and then let go. At 2:13 a.m. the plow passed again, and the driver lifted 2 fingers in the old way. The bell chimed and chimed with normal customers like sand thrown onto ice. For a stretch of half an hour the store reverted to sane. A tourist asked if the Northern Lights came with a schedule. A hunter requested zip ties and mouthwash. A woman bought crayons and looked tired to her bones. I let the rhythm rinse me. I let my breath return to my ribs. I stopped hearing my name where there was no mouth. It didn't last. Things that pretend to be normal are practicing for the moment when they stop. At 2:57 a.m., the lights over aisle 4 did a soft pulse, like a creature settling in its sleep. The small radios we sell to fishermen coughed static in unison. Then the security monitor mounted high in the corner flickered from 4 views to 1. The feed showed the back hallway, the plastic strips breathing, and the freezer door, paint chipped to the memory of paint. I was in the frame. I stood with my head against the metal, frost furred along my hair like a crown. My hand was flat on the door. My mouth was moving. The sound was off, of course. The monitor never gave us audio, but I knew exactly what I was saying. "Lila, let me out." Talia saw it when I saw it. Her hand found mine again, no question this time. "Break room," she said, hoarse. "The rule," I whispered. "Hide in the break room if you see yourself on cameras elsewhere." "Now," she said. We went. We didn't run. Running instigates. The break room was the size of a confession and smelled like coffee and extension cords. We sat on the bench under the corkboard. A flyer for the Lions Club potluck had been curling since July like a dry leaf. A calendar from a feed store in Fairbanks declared an August that hated to be over. "It's not you," Talia said. "It's mimicking you're a possibility." "It knew the voice," I said. "It knew the way I breathe when I'm lying." Talia looked at me for a long time. "What were you doing 9 years ago?" The question fell into the room and made the refrigerator hum louder to be polite. 9 years ago, the number didn't live anywhere soft in me. It lived in the middle distance, a road where the scenery doesn't stick. I pictured rain that turned to snow halfway along a hike. I pictured a ranger with the kind of forehead that apologized for bad news. I pictured a map of Denali with a trailhead circled in pencil. I could not picture my own face. "I was in Denali," I said slowly, "alone." "Why?" "To remember something," I said. The word tasted like a word, not like a fact. A breakup, or a birthday, or the way a mountain looks when it stops being a rumor, I don't know. My pulse thudded in my throat. "Why do you know it's 9? "Because that's when Mara changed," Talia said. "She went into the woods and the woods came back. After that, she loved raw meat and stopped shivering and made lists that didn't save her." Her voice gentled. "I put you on nights not to break you, Lila, to see if the store broke less with you here." A sound trickled into the room from the vents, a chorus of whispers in a language with more vowels than ours. It wasn't words. It felt like learning the shape of a word with your mouth before you know what promise you're making. I pressed my palms to my thighs to stop the tremor. The whisper passed. The corkboard pins gleamed like teeth. "I have to look," I said. "If I hide, it doesn't stop being there." "That's not how stopping works," Talia said, but I was already standing. In the hallway, the plastic strips lifted as if a hand had passed under them. The freezer door had frosted over enough to make the metal an opaque sky, ground down by a weather none of us had asked for. The wedge held, steady and homely. I put 2 fingers on the hinge, felt it relax and tense, like a giant muscle learning a new song. "Lila," the voice said. It was my voice in a way my voice had never been before. It carried not just tone but history, like someone had collected the scuffs off my life and tuned them. Please. I did not open the door. I am not a person who obeys voices without faces. I pressed my ear to the cold and let it burn me. Behind the door, breath. Behind the breath, a second sound I could not name until it found me. It was a river under ice, pressed against a roof it remembers thinner. It was skin remembering fur. "What are you?" I asked, and realized too late that I was granting something dignity. "It's me," it said. "It's us." The voice layered. A grocery store in Juneau, a trail marker, a motel with a carpet that knew every stain by name. "You took my life, you wore it and forgot." The sentence finished with a long, soft scrape like a hand learning to be a hand on the wrong side of air. My knees loosened. "Talia," I said, not turning. If I turned, I might bring my face into view of whatever pressed itself thin against that door. "You hear it." "I hear air," she said, but the air sounded like regret. "Step away." "You're sure it's not a compressor?" I said, uselessly courting an easier world. "It's not a compressor," she said. "Do you want it to be?" My name came again, then the name that was not mine but belonged to me anyway. Lila Voss, the full thing, first and last, as if the voice were scrolling through my form, stamping my margins. Inside the syllables was a place. Denali. The way the mountain's shadow eats a man's idea of himself. Inside the place were boot tracks, one set, and a shape in snow that might have been a person who had chosen to lie down. The door pressed outward. The wedge groaned. Talia swore under her breath in Athabascan, a sound that made the hair rise on my neck for reasons beyond translation. She stepped forward and drove her heel over the wood block until the squeal of tile on tile set my teeth ringing. "Later," she said to the door, and something in her voice worked, like a mother saying a child's name in a tone that closes a window. The pressure eased. The breathing receded toward the back of the freezer, which is not a place but felt like one. We stood there, listening to the absence. I thought of the red parka woman. I thought of coins older than my bones. I thought of a rule crossed out by a hand that shook. I thought of the store as a throat and the door as a tongue and the night as a mouth that had learned the shape of us but not the meaning. "Come with me," Talia said. "There's someone you need to meet. Now, before you decide being you is optional." We took the side exit into a dark that had decided it liked us. The cold was a person. It put its palm on my face and held me there. Our breath built small stars. Talia led down the plowed path to the backlot where the dumpster wore a snow hat and the generator wore a halo. Beyond, the river glinted with a light that came from nowhere we could name. The sky had curtains of green folded high, faint, like northern lights set to save energy. A man waited by the edge of the lot, leaning on a cane that wasn't strictly necessary. He wore a parka the color of ravens and a hat pulled low. When he turned, the porch light cut a line across his cheekbones. His eyes showed the patience of a winter that lasts 6 months and means it. "Elder," Talia said, not a title in her mouth, a classification and intimacy. "This is Lila." "Of course it is," he said. His voice moved the air in a way that reminded me of ice breaking gently to allow a beaver to breathe. "Samuel Killack." He didn't offer a hand. He didn't measure me the way a hunter does. He measured me the way a person measures a story they have heard many versions of and chooses the kindest one to believe. "You're from around here?" I asked, aware of the stupidity laced into the question. "I am where I am needed," he said. 15 winters here, before that closer to the coast, before that farther back than a map would flatter. He tilted his head at the store. "There are scratches." "There are rules," I said. The sentence wanted to be brave. It came out tired. "Rules are promises we make to the parts of the world that have not chosen us yet," he said, "and to the parts that have." He looked at me with a softness that stung. "You have been in a winter longer than this one, Lila Voss. You have been good at it." "Who are you?" I asked, though I knew. I knew the answer, like you know that the river is moving under the crust, or that someone has said your name in a room you can't see. He smiled. It was a small event, like a fox crossing a road. A mimic, he said, wearing a man who died alone and did not want his usefulness to end there. He watched my face to see what that did to it. I have been him long enough that I miss his dog when it is January and my teeth ache where his did. I found a laugh somewhere and set it free to see if it would fly. That sounds very human, I said. Humans forget that being human is a verb, he said. You have been very human. His gaze sharpened. You are also what I am. A wind slid off the river and under my jacket. No, I said, because a person builds barricades out of small words when the large ones threaten to crush. I'm Lila, he agreed gently, the version of her that survived. My throat closed on an old snow. 9 years. Denali. A trail with a name that didn't matter to anyone but the person who was lost on it. The breathing behind the door had found the shape of memory and pressed it against me until it fit. I shook my head to dislodge nothing. What do you want from me? I asked. The same thing the night wants, he said. For you to stay, for you to listen, for you to be the bridge you already are. He looked past me at the store. The newborns are learning faster than we did. The old ones are waking up angry. We need someone who can show them how to sit with hands folded in a checkout line. Is that all? I asked, surprised to hear the humor return, bleached and thin but real. For tonight, he said. Later, there will be summits and speeches and people in suits who smell like recycled air. A woman named Navarro will call you. You will be tired of phones by then. His gaze returned to me. But the breathing in the freezer will not wait for politics. Neither will the ones who bring exact change. How do I know you're not lying to use me? I asked. The question had Talia in it. It had Mara. It had my name stamped with a date we hadn't written. You don't, he said. You do what humans do. You choose and then you carry the choosing. He straightened the cane, which was theater, and you keep the door wedged until morning. He left us there with the river like a long lung. Talia exhaled. I hate when he's right, she said, then shivered and elbowed me back toward the warmth. Inside, the store seemed to have grown, the aisles longer in a way that made no architectural sense. The radios had stopped whispering. The security monitor offered us 4 squares of nothing much. The freezer was a door, just a door. We passed customers whose faces were exactly as they chose them to be. At 3:31 a.m., the woman in the red parka returned and bought 2 packs of crayons and a bag of salt. She counted out coins with a care you give to a child you want to keep still. You will be asked a question, she told me, in the tone of a teacher who suspects a fire drill. You will answer it and become what you answer. What question? I asked, though I knew. Are you one of us? She said, not smiling. Say, I'm still adapting. Her head tilted, not listening to anyone but herself now. It buys you time. She left the coins like prayers, and the bell's jingle sounded briefly like chimes hung in a wind no one else felt. Time frayed after that. We worked. We breathed. We kept the rules as if the rules kept us. The scratches came once more, softer, like a creature remembering a song from a place without walls. I leaned against the counter and tried to recall a birthday cake. Tried to recall the shape of a hand that had held mine because it liked to, not because it needed to be sure I wouldn't walk into a river. I could not find it. I could find the pattern of frost on the breakroom window on a morning in January, the way it feathered like a bird's last thought. At 4:02 a.m., the door opened for no one and closed on a gust that smelled like old pennies. I looked down. A single coin lay on the mat. 1963. Warm. I picked it up and felt, for a moment, a mountain's weight through polite metal. When the next scratch came, discreet, almost apologetic, I went to the hallway alone. I put my palm flat against the painted metal and felt the cold reach me like a message in the blood. I'm here, I said. And then, softly, to the voice that was not a compressor and not a stranger, to the person I had found in the exact shape of my absence, I said, we have until morning. From the other side, my voice came back to me. I'm still adapting, it said, trying my mouth on, practicing. The wedge held. The door did not open, but the whole building breathed, and for the first time that night I believed it might be breathing with me and not around me. Outside, the northern lights uncurled like shy ribbon. Inside, the clock ticked a minute in the wrong direction and then corrected itself. Talia set 2 coffees on the counter. We did not speak. We stood in a circle of fluorescence while the dark pressed its forehead to the glass and listened to us be alive. The hollow beneath part 2. The scratch began like before, measured, patient. But there was a tremor in it now, a thread of urgency braided through the metal. The wedge bit the tiles with a stubborn little song. Talia stood with her hands in her coat pockets like someone trying not to pick a fight with a mirror. "It's worse tonight," I said. "It's honest tonight," she said. "That's worse." I had slept 2 hours earlier, face down on the breakroom table, dreaming about frost crawling like handwriting across glass. I woke with my cheek imprinted by a corkboard pushpin, and a certainty that the hours between 3 and 4 belonged to a different owner. I carried that certainty to the hallway, to the door that claimed nothing but the right to be shut and had in practice become a border. "Lila," the voice said, my voice, but with a pitch too exact to be mine, "please." There are moments when kindness and curiosity share a costume. I put my palm flat to the metal, felt the burn, and said, "Talk to me." Talia flinched at the rule breaking embedded in the sentence and then surrendered to it with a sigh. "2 minutes," she said. "If it turns into bargaining, we leave. If you cry, we leave. If I see your breath pattern change in the wrong way, we leave." "Which way is wrong?" "The one that doesn't sound like breath," she said. Behind the door, the breathing aligned. I was in Denali, it said. There was a ridge line and the weather boiled over it like it forgot how to be polite. I made a decision that ran out of trail. A pause, a scrape, a learning. They say people lie down in snow from a wish to become simple. I lay down and something else stood up. "Me," I said, and the word was both a comfort and a threat. "You, the version," the voice said. "The rest of me learned how to fit in cold places. I memorized your teeth from the other side of glass. I waited for the rules to change." I pictured the trailhead map. The way I never could tell if the little red "you are here" dot meant anything more than a courtesy. I pictured a motel room with a bedspread that felt like it would forgive anything you did to it. I pictured my hands, red and steadier than they had a right to be, counting coins like a ritual that added up to living. "What do you want?" I whispered. "To decide if we are," the voice said. "To decide if you took or if I gave." Something feathered against the metal. To be let in before the rest wake up angry about the terms. The wedge creaked. Talia set her boot heel over it again, claiming geometry on our side. Her mouth was tight. "It's building," she said. "We're getting more night buyers than last week. The exact change kind. The cameras flicker every night at the same minute." She wrinkled her nose as though scent could understand what sight could not. "It feels like the river is talking through the walls." I glanced at the monitor, 4 squares of fluorescent calm. No hall. No second me whispering to a door. It almost reassured. The bell chimed. We moved as if motion were a key. Normal people, humans with wrong ideas about weather and right ideas about soup, bought soup. A snow machiner paid for gas and leaned in to warn me about a patch of black ice by the flats, then stopped mid-lecture to stare at his own reflection and shiver like something had walked through him. He shook it off and joked about ghosts. I laughed like a cashier and checked the pump. At 1:40 a.m. the red parka woman came back. Her hair looked wet, though there was no wet on her shoulders. She set down a single object, a tiny plastic horse from the toy bin. Its head was turned just so mid-knicker. She placed coins on the mat with careful ceremony. "Salt," she said, a beat late, as if receiving the word from upstairs. "2 aisles over," I said, "in cap." She nodded and floated away. Talia followed her with her eyes until the aisle swallowed the parka's red. "She's thinning," she murmured. "They do that when they're between, shimmer at the edges." "What happens if they don't finish?" I asked. "They finish a different way," Talia said. or somebody comes and carries the mess. Somebody who? You'll see, she said, which is not an answer until it is. The scratch returned, this time layered with a soft rattle like teeth chattering out of sequence. I left the counter and went to the hall because pretending not to hear would turn the sound into something larger. Talia came with me. The freezer breathed in sync with my chest, then deliberately fell out of sync, testing. It tried to hum the exact pitch of the generator. It tried silence shaped like a baited hook. When it tried my name again, it blended the syllables with ground glass. "Are you one of us?" it asked. The words hit a place behind my eyes and made it ring. The rule rose in my throat like a reflex trained by someone else's hand. I answered before I knew I was answering. I'm still adapting. The pressure eased fractionally. The breath on the other side exhaled in a small, relieved laugh, the way people laugh when a password works. Talia let out a breath of her own that had been holding up the lights. "Good," she said softly. "You bought us an hour." Back up front, a mother and her little boy stocked snack cakes into a plastic sled. The boy's mittened hand caught on a box edge and he said, "Ow," like practice. I watched his mouth form the O as if it were my mouth forming the O, as if we were both learning vowels for the first time. The red parka woman reappeared at the end of the aisle with a bag of salt and the toy horse. Her expression had shifted to a serene astonishment, as if the world were explaining itself in a new tense. Then the astonishment cracked. She dropped the salt. The bag split and spilled like snow in a hurry. She set the horse very carefully on a shelf label for discount batteries and folded down onto the floor as if taking a knee to look for a lost earring. "Ma'am," I said, already moving. Talia was on the radio, her voice turned flat for efficiency, calling a number that wasn't on the store chart. My body knew how to kneel. I had learned it in other houses. I put my hand out and stopped an inch above the red fabric. The air above her was a degree colder, the cold focused like a scalpel. Her mouth opened. There were too many planes inside. Her breath condensed into angles. Her cheekbones flickered, not with light but with a crystalline logic. When she looked up, her eyes didn't blink so much as reset, 2 frames jumping to catch up. "It's okay," she said. "It's going to be." The last word fractured into pieces that tried to decide what to be. "Back room," Talia said in my ear very quietly, too quietly for the woman to hear. "If she shatters on tile, we'll never get it out." "Can you stand?" I asked the woman. I made my voice a braided rope across a cold creek. "We'll just go right here." I nodded toward the hall like it was a friend. She copied my nod exactly. She reached for the shelf and missed by a measure that should have been small and somehow was. I took her arm. It was firm and not. The parka crackled under my fingers. The tiny horse fell over, plastic hooves clacking the smallest clack in the world. We made it to the back. The freezer exhaled when we passed, as if in recognition. We got her into the break room and onto the bench. The fluorescent light did her no favors. It lit edges that shouldn't have had edges. "What's your name?" I asked. She thought for a long time with her face very still. When she answered, her voice carried the echo of a stairwell. "Evelyn," she said finally, like she had picked it up because it sounded durable. "That's a good name," I said because I had no other tool. "Evelyn, have you had anything to drink today?" She processed the question as if it had been encoded in a different alphabet. "I drank a river," she said. She smiled, and hairline cracks stepped through her lips from corner to corner. "Stay with me," I said. "Count lights." She looked at the ceiling. "1," she said, and then split. It began at her collarbone, a neat prism forming like frost finding a geometry. She didn't scream. She didn't bleed. She unfolded. I had a thought that if I were to press the pieces back together, they would cut me in the shape of a person trying to be kind. Talia had already moved the trash can and slid a mat under her feet. The pieces made no sound when they touched the mat, but the sound happened anyway inside my head, a rain of glass that used to be a woman and now was a suggestion of snow. "Containment," Talia said into the radio, voiceless now. "We need a carry." "Copy," came a voice smooth as a new road. 4 minutes. "Who is that?" I asked, too hushed even to qualify as panic. "The people who pick up what rules can't keep," Talia said. I stared at the pile that had been Evelyn. It held its shape the way a memory does for a few hours after waking. In the glitter I could see a nose, a chin, an intent. I could see my own face staring into it, my face, or the face I had built around a name, reflected 1,000 times, each image slightly rewritten. The back door opened with a courtesy tap, and 3 people entered in suits that looked like they had been borrowed from a science fiction depiction of church ushers. The suits shimmered faintly as if they contained weather. Their boots made no sound. One of them, tall, age less important than posture, nodded to us. No one asked for our names. No one asked for Evelyn. They unfolded a stretcher that wanted to be a harp and coaxed the pieces onto it with brushes softer than eyelashes. "Thank you for calling," the tall one said. The voice had the warmth of a person who practices warmth. "You prevented a more public moment." The visor turned toward me as if in curiosity. "And you kept your door wedged. Good." "How do you know about—" I began. "We know the stores that make it through winters," the tall one said. "We keep an eye on the ones that light the right way." The visor tipped toward the freezer. "That one has a visitor who knows too much. Don't open for it until we brief you." "What happens if we do?" Talia asked, and her tone made it clear that we meant she and do meant I. "Then you'll need more of us, and we might not arrive before the news does," the usher said. "Better to let the decision grow teeth." They took the stretcher away like a secret. The door side shut. We were left with the beat of the generator and the sound of salt settling under a shelf somewhere. I felt hollowed and oddly steadied. There is a calm that follows proximity to disaster, as if the body, having spent all its small anxieties, can finally recognize the one big thing and make room for it. I returned to the counter and sold hand warmers to a hiker who announced he loved the cold because it kept things simple. I did not tell him simplicity was the warmest lie I knew. At 2:33 a.m., the security monitor blinked to the hallway again and showed me there, forehead to metal, speaking with a mouth I couldn't see. I breathed and didn't run. Talia placed the folder of rules on the counter and rested her hand on it like a blessing. "You moved me to nights to test me," I said. "I moved you to nights to test them," she said. "And because I thought if you were what I thought, maybe the worst would calibrate around you instead of through you." She grimaced. "It's a selfish experiment using you as a lightning rod. I'm not proud." "You kept the door wedged," I said. "That feels like pride's cousin." She huffed a laugh through her nose. "Mara would say it's stubbornness married to fear. She was like that before the woods taught her to stop being a person all at once." "When did you start to suspect me?" I asked, the syllables sharper than intended. "The day you didn't flinch when a raven flew into the glass and died," Talia said. "You walked out, picked it up without a tremor, and laid it under the spruce like you were tucking in a child who'd fallen asleep in the wrong place. You didn't look away from its eye." She swallowed. "It looked at you like a mirror." "I thought I was being kind," I said. "You were," she said. "You are." She studied my face as if cataloging something she'd need later to argue with someone. "That's why Samuel watches you." "Samuel," I repeated, and my tongue liked the shape of the name. "He's been here 15 winters." 15 and 2 months, Talia said, because people in Coldhaven count time by the kind that matters. "He's older than his hat wants you to think. He knows the families they replaced and the ones they didn't because they learned to live beside instead of inside." Something in my chest eased. If coexistence had a prototype, it had cheekbones and a cane it didn't need. "He said a woman named Navarro would call," I said, natters of skepticism and relief braided together. "You should answer," Talia said. "If anyone has a plan bigger than a wedge and a prayer, it's the scientists and the aunties." The bell chimed again, and the store filled with quiet chaos. 2 teens in parkas that exaggerated their shoulders bought ramen and made an effort to stand like the posters in the window taught them. A man in a fishing cap examined a magazine with real estate listings, as if to remind himself the idea of owning a house still existed. The coin jar at the counter filled with pennies that wanted to be earlier. From the freezer door my name drifted once more, softer. Lila, it breathed. I am tired of being an echo, let me be a mouth. I almost put my hand on the handle. Talia's right hand closed on my left wrist and the grip was firm, the kind used to keep a friend from stepping off a curb into a very polite bus. No, she said, we don't solve this tonight. Maybe tonight solves us, I said, surprising myself with the way the sentence felt like a thought I'd nursed for a season. Then let it do it through the morning, she said. Morning's better at paperwork. We held until the urge passed through me and out the other side. Desire has a half-life if you don't feed it. The freezer returned to the hum of a tired appliance. The door reclaimed its position as a door. At 3:18 a.m., the front windows pulsed with a green so delicate it could have been imagined. The aurora decided to be kind and fold low enough to make everyone look up at the same time. For a minute, the store held a congregation. Trappers and tourists and things-wearing men and women alike all tilted their heads and let their mouths open in the simple shape of awe. The radios went quiet out of respect. The rules felt like stories we tell to remember how to stand close without deciding who belongs. My throat ached with a grief I hadn't had time to schedule. What happens to her? I asked, meaning Evelyn, meaning the pieces that used to be a woman. Do they? They'll take her to a facility that smells like hospitals and cedar, Talia said. They'll try to sing her back into a shape that chooses hands and eyes. Some make it. Some become ornaments in rooms without windows. Some become salt. She hummed a note and let it die a graceful death. Not every rebirth wants to be a life. The phone on the wall rang. It rarely did. Everyone used cells except elders and the store itself, which preferred wires. Talia lifted the receiver, listened, and then held it out to me with eyebrows doing more work than eyebrows should. It's for you, she said. She says her name like it matters. I took the phone. Arctic Mart, I said out of reflex. Lila Voss. The voice was precise, brisk, and not unkind. Dr. Elena Navarro, University of Alaska, Anchorage. I study the people who are becoming. I shut my eyes in a way that let me still see the green folding beyond the glass. What do you want from me? I asked, skipping hello because formalities are for afternoons. To ask you a question only you can answer, she said. In the background I could hear the small, polite chaos of an office at night, a printer negotiating with itself, a coffee machine insisting. Are you willing to help prevent a war? A customer set down a can of beans. The metallic ring of it hitting the counter sounded like punctuation. Talia watched me, head tilted, as if measuring how much of the answer was going to come from my face. People are filming, Dr. Navarro continued. There are calls to hunt. There are calls to replace. On the winter solstice, a plan is moving. Some of them want to show themselves. Others want to show their teeth. We need someone who has been both. The freezer door breathed my name once, like a reminder of a deadline. The aurora leaned against the glass. My palm still burned from where the metal had kissed it with a lesson. Who are you really? I asked, childish and huge all at once. Someone who believes being human is something you learn, she said. Like speaking, like listening, like forgiveness. Will you come to Anchorage? Will you stand between? I opened my eyes. In the glass of the door I caught myself in reflection, and for an instant I saw a version of me I could not argue with, winter-burned, tired, alive in the verb sense. I'll come, I said, and heard the relief in her intake of breath, a small, unguarded thing. But I have to finish my shift. We have time, Dr. Navarro said. Until we don't, I'll send a team. The line clicked and filled with the old sound of foam between shores. I hung up and stared at my hand as if the phone had altered the length of my fingers. What's the plan? Talia asked. I go to Anchorage and convince a room full of people that we are not a storm but a season, I said. and I keep the wedge in place until then." Talia smiled with the mouth of someone standing on the edge of trouble and choosing, for the 1000th time, to step forward. "I'll pack you jerky," she said, "and a rosary in case science gets tired." From the freezer, a last soft scratch, like a thank you from something that had learned manners. I touched the door with 2 fingers and felt the cold answer like a pulse through metal. Outside, the green thinned to ribbon. Inside, the bell chimed for a girl buying candles and a man buying oil and a creature with a good smile counting quarters minted in the year my name decided it liked me. The store breathed. I breathed back. Morning was still a rumor, but we had pinned a wedge into its mouth. The Hollow Beneath Part 3. By December 18th, Coldhaven had begun to feel less like a town and more like a stage set waiting for its final act. The Arctic Mart glowed with its usual stubborn light, but the aisles seemed taller, the shadows sharper, as if the building itself were bracing. Customers arrived in numbers that made no sense for the population, strangers who bought toothpaste and batteries with exact change, their voices just slightly unthreaded. Families came in 2s and 3s, practicing conversation like it was a new language lesson. Some of them were perfect, indistinguishable. Others shimmered, skin unsure, smiles misplaced. And all of them looked at me as if I were the test they had to pass. Talia counted them. She kept a notebook hidden under the counter, a tally mark for every mimic, a second mark for every collapse. The page had grown crowded, ink bleeding where her hand pressed too hard. She muttered under her breath as she wrote, lines of Athabascan prayer that were more rhythm than plea. "You're making a census," I said. "I'm making a warning," she said. "One I can hand to the right people when they finally come asking, or when they come armed." The freezer had quieted since my answer. I'm still adapting. It seemed to buy us a reprieve. But the quiet was a held breath, not a release. At night I felt it through the walls, a heartbeat that wanted to sync with mine and was impatient with my pace. On December 19th, the store became a pilgrimage. A convoy of snow machines arrived from a village upriver, headlights slicing the dark. They came inside, men, women, children, and each of them carried themselves with a stillness too rehearsed. One boy bought crayons and asked me what color normal was. His voice wobbled like a violin string. "Depends on who you ask," I said. "But if you want a safe bet, green, grass green, forest green." He nodded as if he'd been given a commandment. By the time the convoy left, the counter was covered with coins from decades I had never lived. My drawer refused to close. The metal was warm. When I brushed my palm over them, I felt echoes, breath that wasn't mine, laughter caught on old air, a memory of snow under boots that never belonged to me. That night Samuel Killock appeared again. He moved through the store with a familiarity that belonged to someone who had once nailed the shelves into place. He leaned on his unnecessary cane and regarded me with eyes that had practiced patience for 15 winters. "They're coming faster," he said. "The thaw is no longer polite. The ground spits us out hungry." "Are you frightened?" I asked. "I am beyond frightened," he said, almost gently. "Frightened is for the ones who still believe they can go back. We don't go back, we go through." He fixed me with a look that weighed. "And you are the bridge, they already know it." I wanted to argue, but every mimic who looked at me with gratitude in their new eyes had already delivered the verdict. On December 20th, the Arctic Mart witnessed its first public unraveling. It was a boy, maybe 16, buying chips and soda with a grin too confident. He was nearly perfect, the slang right, the posture casual. He reached for his wallet and then something in him skipped. His chest shimmered, ribs folding outward into brittle light. His face cracked down the middle like porcelain, and his smile became a spray of shards. People screamed. Someone dropped a basket. The chips burst across the floor in a confetti of salt. The boy fell, splitting into crystalline splinters that clattered across the tiles. The sound was obscene, beautiful, unforgettable. Talia slammed the breakroom door shut before anyone else could see. But one human had. A tourist, phone out, recording by instinct, captured the whole collapse before Talia could shout him down. His eyes were wild, his hands shaking, but he didn't stop. By dawn, the video was online. By noon, it was viral. The world woke to mimics. Conspiracy channels screamed *parasites*. Militias spoke of *hunts*. Governments demanded answers they didn't believe. Anchorage news anchors sat stiff and pale, whispering about infiltration. Across the river, headlights prowled late into the night, locals forming patrols with rifles slung casual over their shoulders. The Arctic Mart, once neutral ground, now pulsed with the weight of being the center of something too large. That same night, Dr. Navarro arrived. Not in person, but through the satellite phone Samuel brought like a relic. Her voice was urgent, frayed at the edges, but clear. Lila, the solstice is in 2 days. Mimics across Siberia, Canada, Norway, everywhere the permafrost is thawing, are preparing to reveal themselves. But the panic from this video could ignite a war before they get the chance. We need you in Anchorage. You're the only one who's integrated perfectly. You can speak for them. You can speak for us. For us, I echoed. The words tasted like metal. I'm not sure which side I'm on. Then you're exactly the bridge we need, she said. If you can live in both worlds, maybe both worlds can meet without fire. Talia folded her arms. And if humans say no? Navarro's silence was brief, weighted. Then some mimics have a backup plan, replacement, quiet and efficient, but if that begins, there's no going back. Her words sat like ice in my chest. I thought of the freezer door, of the breathing that knew my name, of the possibility that my existence had begun with theft, even if I had lived it into something else. Lila, Navarro said softly, the choice isn't whether you are human. The choice is whether you'll help us stay human. December 21st came cloaked in aurora. The sky over Coldhaven draped itself in green veils that bent low, brushing the rooftops as if listening. The Arctic Mart was full beyond reason. Mimics crowded every aisle, elders murmuring to children, teens testing slang, mothers balancing carts with trembling precision. Humans came too, wary but desperate, as if buying groceries could anchor them to a version of the world they recognized. The air buzzed with something larger than the hum of freezers. A collective consciousness pressed against me, whispers threading into my skull. You show us how to be. It was not one voice. It was hundreds, thousands. A choir of mouths learning the same song. It bent my knees, filled my lungs with something like prayer. Then, at 11:59 a.m., the world ruptured. A general human, armed with fear, gave an order to fire. A military drone circling Anchorage where the UN summit was gathering dropped into attack posture. Mimics in the crowd outside the convention center flickered, forms rippling with panic. News anchors shrieked over live feeds. The first strike seemed inevitable. And then my face filled the screens. The satellite broadcast was clumsy, but it worked. The UN summit saw me standing behind a podium hastily assembled in a side hall, Dr. Navarro at my side. Samuel in the crowd, Talia gripping my wrist like an anchor. I swallowed the terror, let the hum of mimic voices steady me, and spoke. I am Lila Voss, I said. I was born human, or I thought I was. 9 years ago in Denali, I lay down in the snow and something else stood up. I am a mimic who forgot she wasn't human until she lived like one. I loved. I worked. I chose. If being human is a verb, then I have been it. And so can they. The hall was silent. Cameras whirred like insects. Outside, the mimic crowd pressed closer, their forms shimmering between faces and something older. We're not invaders, I said. We are survivors. The thaw woke us. We learned your shapes because it was the only way to breathe, but breathing turned into living. Living turned into choosing. Let us share this world. Judge us not by our origin, but by what we decide to become. The general barked again, ordering the strike, but the hesitation spread like flame. The operator froze. The crowd, human and mimic alike, shifted, eyes wet, breath held. In that pause, empathy bloomed. The strike was called off. For now, the days after the solstice were not peace, not exactly. The world was split down a new seam. Some humans demanded eradication. Others spoke of kinship, of shared survival. Some mimics argued for replacement still, whispering that coexistence was a dream too fragile. But a new word had entered the lexicon, bridge asterisk. My name carried it. Coldhaven carried it. I returned to the Arctic Mart. The store still hummed, still smelled of bleach and ramen and diesel. But now it was a border outpost, a neutral ground where humans and mimics stood in the same line, waiting for change with candy bars and propane. Talia kept her tally. Samuel visited with parables. Navarro sent papers to sign and speeches to prepare. The freezer still scratched sometimes, polite as a clock, reminding me of the original Lila fatting in the cold. I could almost hear her voice at night, a whisper that might have been love or accusation. You stole my life. Maybe I did, or maybe I kept it warm. One night, alone behind the counter, I whispered back, I'm still adapting. And for the first time, the freezer fell silent as if satisfied. Resolution didn't arrive as a sunrise. In Coldhaven, sunrises are rumors in December, but something shifted. Mimics taught each other to hold coffee cups, to smile on beat, to laugh when it was right and not when it was. Humans learned to stop looking away. The aisles filled with both kinds, their carts jostling, their coins clinking in rhythms that almost matched. I stood at the register, hands steady, breathing steady, and thought, maybe this is what it means to be human after all. The hollow beneath had opened, and we were learning not to fall but to build.